the single deadliest such incident in the West Bank in nearly 20 years. With the start of the olive harvest this month, daily settler attacks and harassment continued across the West Bank, sometimes with the presence or support of Israeli forces. On 17 October, an IDF personnel shot dead a 59-year-old Palestinian woman harvesting olives in the West Bank. The olive harvest is critical to the Palestinian local economy. However, settler violence, along with restrictions on access to land imposed by both settlers and Israeli forces, place it at grave risk. I strongly condemn all acts of violence against civilians, including acts of terror. I call on Israel to protect the Palestinian population and to hold perpetrators of all violence accountable. I urge security forces to exercise maximum restraints and use lethal forces only when it is strictly unavoidable to protect life. Mr. President, on 28 October, the Israeli Knesset adopted 2 laws on UNRWA, forbidding Israeli state officials from contact with UNRWA or its representatives and prohibiting UNRWA operations within what is referred to as the sovereign territory of the State of Israel. These developments risk the collapse of UNRWA's operational across the occupied Palestinian territory and severely undermine humanitarian operations in Gaza, which rely on UNRWA. These bills are set to go into effect in 90 days. The right of Palestinian refugees were set out in a General Assembly resolution that predates the creation of UNRWA. Unilateral steps, such as legislation, which seeks to not only undermine UN mandate work, but threaten to further set back a political resolution to the conflict on the basis of UN resolutions and international law, must be avoided. Mr. President, the confluence of challenges across the region requires us to act with urgency to cease hostilities and de-escalate. We must have a ceasefire now. We must have release of hostages in Gaza now. Without a ceasefire, the fundamental shift required to scale up humanitarian assistance that can meet the current catastrophe in Gaza and to improve the situation for the humanitarian deliveries. We must also concretely advance a political resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, including by seizing irreversible and unilateral steps on the ground that undermine two-state solution. We urgently need a set of understandings to establish a political and security framework in Gaza in line with the principles I've outlined repeatedly to this Council. This framework must facilitate a Palestinian government structure that can reunify Gaza and the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, politically, economically, and administratively, with no reductions in its territory, with no displacement of Palestinians from the Strip. All efforts to these ends must be prioritized. I'm very concerned that facts on the ground are being established that will undermine these core principles for years to come. This includes the attempt by Israel to dismantle UNRWA. I have repeatedly said there can be no long-term solution in Gaza that is not political. There must be a path to the end of the occupation and achieve a two-state solution. Mr. President, finally, Israelis and Palestinians don't deserve this unrelenting conflict that has ruined countless lives. They deserve a better future, one without open-ended conflict, occupation, and a regional war. We must do everything in our power to chart a course towards a just and lasting peace that will enable two-state solution on the basis of UN resolution, previous agreements and international law, with Jerusalem as the capital of both states. The UN stands ready to support all these efforts. I thank you.
I thank Mr.